Hi, everybody. Welcome to our post spring break shift in plans. Um, we're sort of pivoting, and I was inspired to kind of embrace what's going on in the world, um, due in part to the book that we read the first part of the semester, which I'm really glad that we got all of our reading done at the beginning part of the semester because we can now be inspired by what we read and think about a lot of the examples and thinking that others were doing to confront real life problems. And this is something that Christian kept bringing up throughout the beginning half of the semester about how these projects that seemed more tuned to the medical field or to actually real life problem solving and critical thinking seemed more valuable than just like the gimmicks of like downloading an AR app and having it project like Childish Gambino in your living room. Um, and I totally agree, and that's why when I kind of knew that we weren't going to be meeting again on our last meeting date, and immediately just started brainstorming and thinking about, okay, how can we pivot and sort of accommodate everybody, but also produce meaningful work. So we're embarking on a one big project for the rest of the semester. I've created an infographic with all of the project's elements, but overall, this is called Confronting COVID-19. And what I want you all to think about, not only going back to the book and thinking about those examples and kind of big thinkers, but also um, assessing all of the skill sets that you have up at this point, whether they're artistic or not. You all know how to build an AR application at this point, and can certainly delve into more of that development in this project. So with this project, this was really inspired by this, I mean, not only just what's going on, but this newsletter that I want you all to read about social distancing, the sort of impact of the individual in this bigger worldwide problem and pandemic. Um, and I have given you 10 topics to explore in sort of thinking about what you'll pursue with your own project that are listed here. You don't have to touch on every single one, but all of these overlap with each other. So I would not want to see you just focusing on one of these things because of the overlapping nature of how these things are existing and developing in the world. But these are topics that I want us to cover in this project. So in terms of what you're going to do, you're going to propose an intensive project and I give you some tips for programs and applications that you can explore. Um, these programs, Processing, Blender, SketchUp, Unity, Scratch, are all open source. Some are you can access within the browser, like SketchUp and Scratch, so you don't even have to download anything. Unity, Blender, and Processing you do have to download, and I give you some descriptions of like what you can do with this. Some applications, some of these are free. iMovie now has a green screen option, which is pretty cool. And you'll have access to the Adobe Creative Suite, and you will also have free access to Skillshare, which is a free, which is a website where you can watch tutorials and learn how to do video editing in an hour or something. What I'm not necessarily looking for is like if you just designed like posters for each of these topics or something, like okay, that might be a okay graphic design project, but what do we mean by new media art? Well, we have to use a computer, and we want to sort of push traditional media. So animation, kind of thinking about creative coding, and that's where Scratch and processing come in. Unity you've already been exploring, so augmented reality remains an option. You can also think about the sort of like videos that Shanna Moulton makes, where they're very kind of archaic in nature, or like how they're made. But she's utilizing a green screen, and it's not like a traditional film or movie. I also have some data visualization resources and links, because that might, in terms of finding actual numbers and doing research about the coronavirus overall, you might want to input some of that data to then generate artwork. So what's coming up? The first thing that you're going to do is propose your project. And there's a discussion forum where you will submit this work. And it's pretty detailed in terms of what you need to write and what I'm expecting. I'm expecting that you spend at least 6 hours a week on this, so it should be pretty intensive in terms of the labor and the critical thinking involved. I will mention in a separate video, talk about your reports from home that are also now in the discussion forum, but you are going to use these to sort of account for the weekly goals and outcomes that you put in your proposal. We'll have one big critique online in the middle of the latter part of the semester, where you'll submit what you have and get some feedback and give feedback. And then the final project date is due here. And I have an assignment section on Blackboard for that. This program's and applications I went over, inspiration I went over. My contact information is listed here. If you want to chat with me, just send me a heads up. You're welcome to text me, just as long as it's within normal kind of business hours, like between 9 to 5, because I am navigating a situation where I'm going to be parenting while I'm teaching, which is fine. I can totally do it, but I do want to maintain some boundaries between my family life and my work life. So I have a folder also designated for free pre-midterm content, which is all of our previous projects. And then the final project submission is here. What I want you to think about in terms of the topics especially is that in sort of thinking about how you can utilize some of these applications or media, is that your solutions or approaches to these topics doesn't necessarily have to be like grounded in the real world. They can be kind of fantastical or present like, what if gravity didn't exist? They're not necessarily like totally realistic, because we can flex our artistic and creative muscles with this. So 2 examples that I will link to in the infographic too this is a project by the Yes Men, who are a kind of performance art duo, where they sort of infiltrate the corporate world, especially like more exposing more like corrupt aspects of the corporate world. And so they went to a conference and demonstrated these suits that are supposed to help in the case of a terrorist attack. And these were actually like, they kind of go present these in character to people that then fall for the gimmick. And they then expose that kind of ignorance and corruption within the corporation. But there's no way like something like this would be mass produced for consumption, or at least not at this point. And also Joshua Haycraft, which I think that I mentioned his work to you all earlier in the semester, but Josh is using green screen and video compositing. This is himself to composite himself into these digital sketches and videos. And this world, BHBITB, is kind of this like corporate futuristic world that where we all live in isolated pods. So his work is definitely worth checking out in terms of a more fantastical approach to real life problems. So this is an intense project. I'm expecting you all to sort of push yourselves. There can be written components to it as well that you can propose. I'll just go over to the project proposal in the discussion board. Most of this you won't see. A lot of this is invisible to you right now. But here, this is where you'll submit your project proposal as just a PDF, and you're submitting it here so that you can get and give feedback to your classmates. So I'm looking for a detailed written description of the project, including the overall purpose, the angle, and the topics that you're going to explore. And this should be about 500 words. A description of the programs and new media art skills that you're going to utilize throughout the project. Inspiration for this project, any of the features artists inspire you, anything you heard on the news, anything else, and you can include images or anything to help illustrate or back up those ideas. Any sketches or mock-ups that help to explain your ideas or your approach. A week-by-week timeline with goals and expected outcomes for each week. And you should be, like I mentioned, committing at least 6 hours per week to this class and accounting for this in your reports from home. And an explanation of how your work will be presented. Are you going to turn this all in as a website, on a YouTube channel, like in a final PDF portfolio of works? Like, how do you imagine packaging it all up? So you have until the 31st to do a lot of exploring in terms of checking out the article or that newsletter under the inspiration button, going back to our features artists, thinking back about the book, checking out these programs and applications and links, and just sort of thinking about what you might want to utilize, thinking about the topics. So a lot of time to brainstorm and kind of lay things out. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm really excited about this. I think it's a great way for us to apply creativity and critical thinking to a real world issue, and also as a way to kind of stay in tune with each other by producing a project about a common subject. All right, thanks everybody.